Do you know Genghis Khan? For those who don't know, Genghis Khan was not only known as a great leader and conqueror, he was also recognized as one of the most feared leaders in history because so many soldiers and civilians died during his conquests. According to estimates, he killed almost 40 million people. But the question is, how did this all start? What was his childhood like? Who taught him? What tactics did he use? And most importantly, why did he become one of the most well-known leaders in the world? That's what we're going to find out. Before he became known as Genghis Khan, his real name was Temujin. Temujin's story began in the vast grasslands of Mongolia around the year 1162. The exact year of his birth is uncertain because there were no complete records during that time. The place where he grew up is called the steppe. It is an extremely vast land with almost no trees. The winters are very cold, the winds are strong, and there are very few places suitable for farming. Because of this, many Mongols moved from place to place. They brought their horses, sheep, goats, and other animals to areas with fresh grass and water. The Mongols were not yet united at that time. They were still divided into many tribes and clans. Each group had its own leader and its own warriors. They often fought because of animals, grazing lands, food, and power. Stealing, kidnapping, and revenge were also common between rival groups. Temujin's father was Yasuge, a well-known warrior and leader of a small group from the Borjigin clan. His mother was Holun. According to an old Mongol tale, Yasuge kidnapped Holun from another man and made her his wife. This was a harsh event, but such kidnappings really happened back then between tribes. Even so, while Temujin was still young, he was already skilled at riding horses, hunting, fishing, and surviving in a dangerous environment. Horses are not toys for the Mongols. They are their main means of transportation for hunting and their most important tool in war. That's why, even at a young age, they are taught to balance their bodies while the horse is running fast. They also learn how to use a bow and arrow even while riding a horse. When Temujin was only about 8 or 9 years old, his father brought him to the family of a young girl named Borte. Here, the two families agreed that one day Temujin and Borte would get married. This was not yet a real marriage, but rather an agreement between the two families to establish a stronger bond between them. And here, Yasuge left Temujin with Borte's family so that he could get to know his future wife and the new group he would be joining. After this, while Yasuge was on his way home, he encountered some Tatars. The Tatars were one of the groups that had long been in conflict with their family. According to the secret history of the Mongols, the Tatars fed Yasuge and allegedly put poison in his food. Afterwards, he was still able to get home, but his condition worsened and he died after a few days. Because of this, Temujin was immediately called home. In an instant, he lost his father, and the whole family lost their protection. In their family, a strong leader was important. He was the head. He was the one who provided food, defended the family, and made agreements with other groups. When Yasuge died, his former men refused to follow Holun, the wife of Yasuge. They didn't want to support a widow and her children because they would just be extra mouths to feed. They abandoned the family. Holun was left with Temujin, her other children, and Yasuge's children from his previous wife. They no longer had a large herd of animals. They had no army to defend them. They also had no powerful relatives who could help them right away. To survive, they gathered roots and wild plants. They hunted small animals and fished in the river. They did not live like the family of a leader. They often lacked food, and every fish or animal they caught had to be shared. This is where the intense conflict within the family began. One of Temujin's older half-brothers was Vector. Because he was older, he could claim the position as the main man in the family. For Temujin, that was a problem. This meant that he wouldn't be the one in charge, and Vector could take control of their family. According to the old history of the Mongols, the conflict got even worse because of food. There was an instance when Vector allegedly took a fish that another sibling had caught. Because of anger and the struggle for power, Temujin and his brother Kasar killed Vector using their bows. This was not a simple quarrel between siblings. Temujin killed his own half-brother because he saw him as a rival for food and leadership. Their mother, Holun, was furious. She knew that what her sons did was dangerous. Instead of helping each other during hard times, they only made their family weaker. But this incident also revealed an important part of Temujin's character. Even as a child, he was already willing to use violence against anyone he saw as a threat. Even if it was his own family, he would not let them take his position. It wasn't long before the Taichud noticed Temujin's growing boldness. The Taichud were a group that was once connected to his father, but they were also among those who turned their backs on his family. For them, Temujin might grow up, gather followers, and hold them accountable for abandoning his family. That's why they looked for him and took him captive. They put a kinjay on him, a heavy wooden device worn around the neck and shoulders of a prisoner. Because it was large and heavy, it was hard to run, lie down, eat, or use his hands. But while the guards were celebrating, Temujin found an opportunity. He managed to escape from his guard. He ran toward a river and hid in the water. He only exposed his face to breathe while the Taichud searched for him. He was noticed by a man named Sorcerer Kanshira, but instead of shouting out Temujin's location, he did not report him. Later, Sorcerer Kanshira's family helped him remove the heavy wooden collar from his neck and hid him from his pursuers. When the path was safe, Temujin escaped and returned to his family. He still had no army, no wealth, and he still wasn't powerful. But he had already overcome his father's death, severe hunger, betrayal by his own tribe, family conflict, and imprisonment. And from these experiences, he learned 3 things that he would use throughout his life. Bloodline alone is not enough to trust a person. Loyalty is more important than being related by blood. And in their world, a leader without allies could easily disappear. So the next thing Temujin would do was not to immediately build a large army. First, he needed to find people who were willing to stand by his side and prove to them that he could repay their loyalty. When Temujin returned to his family, it was clear that he couldn't survive on his own. He needed a wife, allies, and warriors who were willing to follow him. So he went back to Berta, the woman he had long been promised to marry. It's important to remember that he was not yet called Genghis Khan at this time. His name was still Temujin. Many more years would pass before he would be recognized as the leader of the United Mongols. Despite this, at the age of 16, Temujin married Berta. Their marriage was not just about the two of them. Marriage was also a way to bring 2 families closer together and strengthen their protection. As a wedding gift, Berta's family reportedly gave Temujin an expensive coat made of sable fur. The sable is an animal with thick and expensive fur. At that time, a coat like this was not just a simple piece of clothing. It was like a great treasure that could be exchanged for help, protection, or a political alliance. Temujin did not keep this gift for himself. He brought it to Togrul, the powerful leader of the Karaite. Togrul was not just a stranger. He used to be a close ally of Temujin's father. They were considered Anda, or sworn brothers. They were not true blood brothers, but they promised to help and defend each other. Temujin gave the sable coat to Togrul as a sign of respect. At the same time, he reminded him that he was the son of his former ally. What Temujin did was wise. Instead of using the coat to buy food, he used it to gain the support of a powerful leader. He knew that having a strong ally was more important than having a fine piece of clothing. Togrul accepted the gift and treated Temujin as his own son. He also promised to help him rebuild his own group. This was one of Temujin's first major steps toward power. But before he could fully benefit from the new alliance, a serious problem arose. The Merkit attacked his camp. The Merkit were a powerful group who had long held a grudge against Temujin's family. Several years earlier, Temujin's father had kidnapped Holon, his mother, from a Merkit man. So the Merkit attack was not just a random act of theft. It was likely an act of revenge for his father's abduction of his mother. When the Merkit warriors arrived, Temujin quickly escaped, and the other members of his family. But Bertie was not able to escape with them, so she was captured and taken by the Merkit. This was a great shame and a huge danger for Temujin. If he couldn't save his wife, other groups might think he was weak and couldn't protect his own family. But he couldn't attack the Merkit alone, so he asked Tughril for help. He also sought support from Jamukha, his childhood friend. Like Tughril and Yesuge, Temujin and Jamukha also became Anda. This means they promised to treat each other as true brothers. Tughril and Jamukha agreed to help. They joined their forces and attacked the Merkit camp. The exact size of their army is unclear because old records differ. What is clear is that their forces were enough to surprise and defeat the Merkit. In the middle of the attack, Temujin found Berta and brought her home. Historical records are unclear about everything that happened to Berta while she was a captive. Despite this, a few months after she was rescued, she gave birth to a son named Joki. Because of the length of her captivity, questions spread about whether Temujin was really Jochi's father. This was never proven. Despite the doubts of some, Temujin acknowledged Jochi as his own son. That decision was important. In front of his family and his followers, he did not reject Berta, and he did not reject the child either. But the issue about Jochi's origins would return after many years, and it would cause tension between Temujin's sons. Rescuing Berta brought a significant change in Temujin's life. First, it showed that he could ask for help and form alliances when necessary. Second, he became known to more warriors. And third, other groups saw that he did not simply abandon the people who were important to him. After the battle, Temujin and Jamukha became closer. They traveled together, ate together, and lived with their men. At first, it seemed like they were headed in the same direction. They both wanted to be strong and have a large group, but their ways of leading were different. Jamukha came from a high social class. For him, leadership should remain with traditional leaders, and well-known families should hold the highest positions. Temujin, on the other hand, had a different perspective. He was willing to give someone a high position because of their loyalty and ability, even if they did not come from a wealthy family. For ordinary warriors, this was a big deal. In the old system, it was hard to rise up if you were not born into a powerful clan. But in Temujin's group, a skilled and loyal warrior could rise in position. It gradually became clear that the two leaders could not stay together. According to the secret history of the Mongols, while they were looking for new pasture, Jamukha made a suggestion about where they should camp. Temujin did not follow. He continued the journey with his family and followers. Many of the people who used to follow Jamukha joined Temujin. It is not clear if a simple conversation was the reason for their separation. It's possible that the tension between them had been growing for a long time because both of them wanted to lead. But from then on, the once sworn brothers gradually became rivals. As more people followed Temujin, he needed to find food, animals, and pasture for them. In the steppe, it's not easy to feed thousands of people and horses. There are no permanent warehouses full of food. When the grass runs out or the animals die, they have to move or find another source. Because of this, raiding other groups is common. They steal horses and animals. They also take equipment and sometimes take captured people and make them new members, slaves, or wives. Temujin also took part in this system. He was not simply a hero who only saved the weak. He was also a leader who used violence, intimidation, and taking property to increase his own power. But there was an important difference in the way he included the defeated groups. Instead of keeping each clan separate, he mixed the new warriors into his own forces. In this way, their loyalty to their former leader was reduced and replaced with direct loyalty to Temujin. His group grew larger, but Jamukha's anger also intensified. By the late 1180s, their rivalry led to war. It wasn't just a simple quarrel over grazing lands. Both of them were fighting to determine who would become the main leader of the Mongols. In the battle commonly known as the Battle of Dalan Baljut, Temujin's forces were defeated. Jamukha's army attacked swiftly and in an organized manner. Temujin's men still lacked the experience and unity needed to win against his former friend. According to the secret history of the Mongols, after the battle, Jamukha punished some of the captives in a very cruel way. It is said that he cooked or killed 70 captives using large containers. Instead of making people fear and obey him even more, many people lost their trust in him. They saw that if they lost or made a mistake, they could be punished without mercy. Meanwhile, even though Temujin was defeated, he was never completely gone. Not everything he did in the following years is clear because there are few records about this part of his life. But when he reappeared as a strong leader, his men were more organized. Temujin learned that the courage of each warrior was not enough. Even if there are many soldiers, they will be defeated if there are no clear orders. There is no discipline, and everyone acts on their own. So he began to change the way he formed his army. He did not keep the warriors together based only on their clan or family. He mixed them together and placed them in units with a clear leader. This was important because it was harder for an entire clan to rebel when its members were separated into different units. Obeying orders also became more important. When the leader ordered a retreat, the whole unit had to retreat. When told not to pursue the enemy, no one could just wander off to get their own loot. This was not yet the fully developed military system that he would use in his future conquests. But this is where the idea began to form, that organization is more important than simply having a large number of warriors. Every Mongol warrior was skilled at riding horses and using a bow. Usually, they had more than one horse, so they could quickly switch when the one they were riding got tired. Because of this, they could travel quickly over long distances. But the claim that they could always travel exactly 70 miles per day should not be considered the regular speed of the entire army. That depended on the weather, terrain, amount of food, and the condition of their horses. Their real strength was their ability to move faster than many of their enemies. They could suddenly appear in one place, retreat before the enemy could recover, and attack again from another direction. While Temujin was organizing his forces, he had the chance to fight one of his family's oldest enemies, the Tatars. At that time, the large kingdom in northern China was ruled by the Jin dynasty. It was not the Qin Empire as stated in the source. The Qin and Jin dynasties are different, and there is more than 1,000 years between their eras. The Jin dynasty had its own problems with the Tatars. Because of this, the Jin cooperated with Tugrul and Temujin to attack them. For Temujin, this was not just a mission for a larger kingdom, it was also an opportunity for revenge. The Tatars were blamed for poisoning his father. So attacking them had a personal motive aside from political and military benefits. The combined forces of Temujin and Tugrul defeated a large group of Tatars around 1196. Because of this victory, the Jin government gave them titles as a reward. Temujin's reputation in the steppe rose even higher. But not all the Tatars were completely defeated in a single battle. They still had many remaining groups, and it would take several more years before Temujin could fully subdue them. As he grew stronger, Jamukha continued to look for allies. Their former friendship turned into a widespread rivalry. It was no longer just two men fighting. Many tribes and clans were divided over whom they would support. On one side was Jamukha, supported by many traditional leaders. On the other side was Temujin, who gained support from people who believed they could rise through their own skill and loyalty. Temujin did not immediately defeat Jamukha in 3 consecutive battles as the source claims. Their conflict was longer and more chaotic. There were times when Temujin was defeated. There were also times when his allies left him. Sometimes his former friends even sided with the enemy. But every time he came back, his forces were more organized and larger. By the early 1200s, Jamukha became part of a large alliance that wanted to stop Temujin from growing stronger. Jamukha was even elected as Gurkhan, a title that means a great or powerful leader, but the title wasn't enough to keep his alliance together. Many of his companions had their own interests. If they saw that the other side was stronger or more generous, they could switch sides. This was one of the biggest weaknesses of the old tribal alliances. Unity often depended solely on the personal relationships of the leaders. Meanwhile, Temujin continued to build a system that did not rely solely on kinship. In 1204, he faced the Naiman, one of the strongest remaining groups in the western part of the steppe. 80,000 cavalry is not the exact number of his army. There are no reliable records to confirm that figure. According to old accounts, Temujin used deception before the battle. He reportedly ordered his men to light many fires at night. Because of this, the Naiman thought that Temujin's army was enormous. The next day, he attacked their forces. The Naiman were defeated and their main leader was killed. Some survived, but their ability to control a large part of the steppe was destroyed. Jamukha was with the Naiman alliance, but he managed to escape again. At that point, there were only a few strong leaders left who could stand in Temujin's way. The boy who once had no horse of his own, no protection, and no tribe willing to take him in had become the strongest leader in Mongolia. But the fight was not over yet. As he drew closer to absolute power, he still had to face the hardest question of his life. What would he do about Jamukha, the former friend he once called brother, but who had now become the last major obstacle to his reign? In the end, Jamukha was betrayed by his own men and brought to Temujin. But instead of rewarding the traitors, Temujin had them executed. For him, a person who can betray their own leader can also betray others. He even invited Jamukha to return to his side, but Jamukha refused. Jamukha only asked to be killed without shedding his blood. It is not clear exactly how he was killed, but his death ended the greatest rivalry for leadership in Mongolia. In 1206, the main leaders gathered in a meeting called a Kurultai. Here, Temujin was recognized as the supreme leader and given the title Genghis Khan. From then on, he was no longer just the leader of a single clan. He became the leader of the united Mongols. Genghis Khan organized his army into clear units, and high rank was not limited to the sons of the wealthy. And former leaders could still hold high positions. An ordinary warrior could also rise through the ranks if he was skilled, brave, and loyal. Discipline was strict, and the punishment for disobedience or abandoning the unit was severe. He also created a fast messenger system, where riders would change horses at stations so that orders could be delivered quickly. After uniting the Mongols, he attacked Western Xia, a kingdom of the Tanguts located on an important trade route between Mongolia and China. By 1209, Western Xia was forced to recognize his authority and pay tribute. After this, he faced the larger Jin dynasty in northern China. In 1211, the Great Mongol Invasion began. The Mongol cavalry was strong in open areas, but they struggled with cities that had high walls. So they hired engineers and learned to use catapults, siege towers, and other equipment to enter the cities. In 1215, Zhongdu, the city located in what is now modern Beijing, fell, but the entire Jin dynasty had not yet been completely conquered. The war continued, and it did not finally fall until 1234, several years after Genghis Khan died. Before attacking a city, it was often given the chance to surrender first. If it surrendered immediately, it could avoid severe destruction. But if they fought back and lost, the consequences were severe. Many cities were destroyed, and countless people died. The Mongols used fear to encourage other places to surrender without fighting. As his territory expanded, Genghis Khan tried to establish trade with the Khwarezmian Empire in Central Asia. He sent a caravan of merchants, but when they arrived in the city of Otrar, they were accused of being spies. Their goods were seized and most of them were killed. Genghis Khan sent envoys to ask for an explanation, but one of the envoys was also killed and the others were humiliated. For Genghis Khan, this was a major violation. Envoys should be safe because they are the ones who carry messages between leaders. In 1219, he attacked the Khwarezmian Empire. He divided his army and sent them in different directions. Because of this, the enemy didn't know where to send their soldiers. One by one, Otrar, Bukhara, Samarkand, and other important cities fell. Muhammad II fled and died while in hiding. His son, Jalal al-Din, continued to fight, but he was never able to restore the former strength of their empire. By 1221, the main part of the Khwarezmian Empire was destroyed. Many cities were ruined, and countless people were killed. The exact number of those who died is uncertain, but it's clear that this was one of the most devastating campaigns of the Mongol Empire. As Genghis Khan grew older, he needed to choose someone to succeed him. He had 4 main sons with Berta, Jochi, Chagatai, Ogedei, and Tolui. Because Jochi and Chagatai did not get along, he chose Ogedei as his heir. He was calmer and better able to keep the family together. In 1226, Genghis Khan repeatedly attacked Western Xia because they refused to help in his earlier campaigns. As the war continued, his health worsened. There are stories that he fell from his horse, got injured, or became ill. But it's not certain which of these is the real reason. Genghis Khan died in 1227. The Mongols kept his death a secret at first so the enemy wouldn't find out. Until now, no one knows where he was buried. After his death, his children and grandchildren continued the conquests. The Mongol armies reached Korea, China, the Middle East, Russia, and Eastern Europe. Eventually, their territory became the largest contiguous land empire in history. Several major trade routes also became safer under Mongol rule. Products, technology, knowledge, and ideas spread more quickly between the East and the West. But this success cannot be separated from extreme violence. Genghis Khan united groups that had long been fighting and built a vast empire. But that power was built through war, fear, and destruction. Genghis Khan died, but the army and system he left behind continued to advance and change the history of a large part of the world.